difference in the press box.
Yes, absolutely.
From the first drive when Harburg took the field to when Dylan Raiola took his first snap. There was a noticeable difference in the crowd that we could hear from the press box.
And I think there was a noticeable difference with Dylan Raiola on the field. I think Heinrich Harburg made, looks like you could see, the first drive didn't go quite as well, maybe trying to iron out some of the kinks and, kind of get ready, get going there, getting his blood flowing. But he made some really impressive throws, some good zip on his ball. Maybe we were talking about it too up there in the press box, Austin. Maybe one of the best throws we've seen in his Cornhusker career. So I think that the improvement that's kind of been talked about with Heinrich Harburg was good. It was there, but it's crazy to say a guy that won 5 games last year as your starter. I think the difference that I saw between him and Dylan, maybe several differences. I mean, Heinrich was able to run a little bit, and we saw that a little bit too. But it's just the consistency which with Dylan is able to put the ball in a spot that only his receiver can get it, or certain places where he can zip it in, back shoulder throws, all that. It just kind of, I don't want to say surprise because we heard all the good news, but just you understand that why he is the best Nebraska recruit of all time. He looks like a seasoned vet out there already. I'm understanding it is the spring game, but just where the ball placement and kind of risk taking. He did have an interception on a tip ball that he threw a little bit behind, but the rule is if you're a wide receiver, you get your hands on the ball, you got to catch that. So, I mean, he's still going to have some freshman mistakes, I suppose, but he doesn't look like he's going to have a whole lot of them. Not what you would typically expect, obviously, from a freshman.
Correct. And that interception, I think he was expecting his guy to maybe sit down in the zone a little more. The receiver might have kept running, but 2 throws stand out to me. The first one that I remember is 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. Dylan Raiola fits it between a linebacker, corner, and a safety. Layers it in perfectly with touch in kind of that intermediate zone where Nebraska hasn't had a lot of success. That's a conversion. They could pick up 22 yards on it because not only did he just fit the ball in the window, he gave his receiver a chance to do something with it. So that was impressive. And then it was an incompletion in the end zone. I don't remember if it was Lloyd or Barney in kind of the northeast corner of the end zone where Raiola put that ball where only his receiver could get it. Might have been some miscommunication. I think the receiver broke out instead of up like Raiola was expecting there at the end of the route. But that was an extremely catchable ball if they get on the same page. But even though it wasn't maybe thrown perfectly or there's miscommunication, good job by Raiola and then the receiver too to not give the defender any idea where the ball was going. Right? It could have been turned around and intercepted very easily, but it's just that kind of savvy and ball placement that was good. Harburg's long touchdown then to Barney. I'm going to give him credit for the throw because I think for the most part, he looked better. Not perfect. You still saw him on some of those, tight end flat routes or quick throws. He's still not afraid to drop that elbow down. The touchdown to Fedoni was a little awkward. He probably would have been sacked, but okay, he got it off. But on that touchdown, I don't know if it was designed to go back shoulder. That's where it went. I thought Barney had a step, so maybe even a little bit more with the wind. That's just a walk-in touchdown, no harm, no foul, but a nice back shoulder throw, a nice adjustment and catch by Barney. And I'm glad that Nebraska aired it out. Matt Rule said, obviously the marketing department would kill him, but he wanted it to be the red-white shootout. For only being, 46 points, we really did see the quarterbacks air it out. As a whole, they ended up 37 for 70 through the air with 2 interceptions, really on back-to-back plays. And that's really all it was. The one fumbled snap by Raiola was a little weird. But other than that, I thought the Nebraska passing game looked leaps and bounds better, just more prepared and more consistent than it did last year, really at any point.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, you have to take all this with a grain of salt. There was, I think Rex Guthrie had a kind of a rough day out there. And that's, if you haven't heard of that name, I think it's because, these are some of the backups that they're slinging the ball against. And in one of their top corners, Bly Hill went down somewhat early in the game. Afterwards, after the game, Matt Rule has said that is a semi-serious type of injury, more of a concern with the other injury, Demetrius Bell, who went down earlier. So we'll have to kind of wait and see on that. And that one was really that was really disappointing because it came on a play that shouldn't have been a play because Ja'Cory Barney return the kick. He was going to return it to the house. He had his white jersey on. He's going into the end zone. He looked at his peripheral. He just saw a white jersey there. Turned out it was a gray jersey, and Tristan Alfano, the kicker, ran him down. And so they had to run a couple extra plays to get the ball in the end zone there. Ended up punching it in, but that wasn't before the Bell injury. So just kind of a unfortunate thing that could have been avoided had the kicker not been wearing gray, I suppose.
I almost would have just given Barney credit for the touchdown and kicked off, right? I mean, I get to the spring game, you want to give your offense some work, but the young man had a touchdown. Like, Alvano's not hawking him down in a game. I'm sorry. Like, not that Tristan Alvano's a terrible athlete or anything, but Barney looked good. Pretty much all day. Alvano's not catching him. So, yeah, it's a spring game. You want to get your offense more work. But I almost say, you know what? Red special teams, you biffed this one. So, here you go, right back on offense. White defense, get on the field, because that's kick return touchdown.
Well, I think that is, as you mentioned, Alvano is, I think, one of the concerns coming out of this game. There's a lot that you can could read into. There's a lot that you shouldn't read into, again, because of the quality of play that people are going against. But a 32-yard field goal is a 32-yard field goal. I don't know. I just said 32. I don't know exactly what they're. I think he missed a 32 and a 43. Ended up
then made the 40.
Yeah, made a 40. That's more early season Tristan Alvano that we saw, as opposed to last season, later in the season when he was able to get that going. Is that enough of a concern to you to maybe add some competition there in the portal if you could, or you think you just kind of keeping riding the wave? It was one thing that was a little bit concerning, I suppose, from today.
We need the dual threat back. That's really what we need. We need the kicker punter combo.
Yes, that's
Brian
right.
Buschini, you are my choice for field goal kicker. Bring it. Make it happen.
Do it. Yeah, Alex Henry and Brett Maher did that pretty well.
Right,
yeah.
It worked out fine for them. It's that's the real downfall of Nebraska football is no dual threat punter kicker, no two-way special teamers. Yeah, no, it is officially concerning. Nebraska has struggled on special teams, especially in field goal kicking department, for far too long. And yeah, Alvano got better at the end of last year, but still wasn't perfect even over the last half of the season. And I'm willing to give the young man a chance to, try to work those kinks out to try to improve. I mean, he was decently highly rated kicker. We know he has the leg, just even back from his high school exploits. But man, if you get to the 30-yard line, that's got to be points somehow, some way.
Yeah.
If Nebraska takes better care of the football on offense, isn't fumbling down there, isn't throwing red zone interceptions, even if they don't score a touchdown, you got to be able to cash it in for points. So, yeah, I'm probably in the yellow to orange meter in terms of my concern with Tristan Alvano. It's sooner rather than later at this point. Something's got to change for him.
Now, the good news for Nebraska is with the Raiola that we saw today, I think you could expect them to score a little bit more than the 18 points that they averaged last year.
I don't know, Bock. They only got 21 today.
Well, it's interesting, too, and I wanted to go back and through those drives is because when they were kind of switching quarterbacks on teams, and so it was like red and white 7 versus 7-7, but it was really it was really Dylan 14 and the other quarterbacks nothing at that point. I don't know what it ended up with the drives because Harburg had a few of them. But I think that you feel pretty good about where this offense is going as far as the passing game. Again, it's hard to completely say that that's the level of competition you're going to play outside of maybe Northern Iowa or UTEP. Even then, probably not quite to that level because Nebraska, even their first team defense was holding out several of their starters. So this was This is a showcase, right? So, but in any case, what you can do is just kind of, again, look at his measurables, look at his throwing motion, look at the throws that he did make, the ball placement, and feel, okay, this is going to take a step up. And it's going to be hard. I know they're not going to name the starter, but it's going to be hard for anybody to believe that Dylan's not going to take that thing. I'll say this. I think Harburg did look improved, but Dylan looked, and for what it's not, this other guy's a true freshman, should be in high school. But Dylan looked miles ahead of Dan Kalen at this point.
I think so too. So I'm trying to go back through the drive summary. So it was Raiola on his first drive. Harburg responds. Then Raiola after that. Kalen was the quarterback for the first Dante Dowdell touchdown. Harburg tied Raiola after that. Let's see. Raiola led the missed field goal drive near the end of the first half. Scrolling down to the third quarter here. Then it was Raiola for the second touchdown by Dowdell. Then the final field goal drive was led by Luke Longville. So that's
the dagger.
According to right. To my count, that's 3 for Raiola, 2 for Harburg, 1 for Kalen.
But the one for Kalen, that was the kick return. That was like a 12-yard drive, wasn't it?
Still counts, right? Jeff Sims got credit for the touchdown pass for Amir Johnson's return at Minnesota.
I know. Just to my point that I don't, again, it's not to be overly critical, but I don't think Daniel Kalen necessarily flashed too much today.
No, he wasn't great. Harburg forced a couple throws too. I think Kalen was just off. There were a couple throws he had that were just, 4 inches too high, 4 inches outside. So I think he was making the right reads for the most part. A couple moments of hesitancy, but I wasn't discouraged by what I saw from Daniel Kalen. I'm just going to credit the other guys for looking more ready than him.
And with that being said, guys, we do got to throw it to break here, and I'll jump in here. But again, obviously talking about Daniel Kalen from that Elkhorn area. Obviously pretty bad what happened yesterday. So again, to help people affected by disasters, big and small, text Red Cross to 90999 to give $10 to American Red Cross. Nebraska strong. We stand with Nebraska and our neighbors in Iowa. And for this post-game show, we'll keep it rolling here a little bit. Still kind of on that time estimate. The storms look like they'll be later today, but just be safe if you're traveling. Again, especially south of Lincoln. If you're heading south towards Beatrice, Falls City, southeast, even a little more, that's tornado watch area again today. Meanwhile, in Lincoln, just flash flood warning. But again, just be safe for anybody traveling, especially that southeast direction. Just beware and follow the weather. But we'll throw it to break here. We'll do, looks like maybe one more segment on the other side here. So again, don't go anywhere. We got live reactions. Jake Bachman, Austin Orman in here. We're down at the spring game. They'll give you their thoughts on the game. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back after this break.
Nebco is hiring CDL drivers for Ready Mixed Concrete, Husker Concrete, and Beatrice Concrete. Nebco offers great pay, medical and retirement benefits, paid time off, and they pay for CDL training. Apply today and start your new career with a $2,500 hiring bonus. From Nebco's beginning in 1908, it's the employees that have formed the company's solid foundation. Start your career today. Visit nebcoinc.com. That's NEBCOINC.com.
It's the best time of the year to order a new John Deere sprayer during Landmark Implement's Fast Start Early Order program. Leverage the industry's latest technology with See and Spray to target weeds in season in corn and soybeans and use less herbicide per acre. Utilize Exact Apply to save in chemical usage and prevent over-application. Now is the time to lock in the best price of the year during Landmark Implement's Fast Start Early Order program. Contact your local Landmark location for full details and experience the Landmark difference.
Just do it. Stop judging me. Just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend.
Buckle up and hang on. This is going to be a good one.
The fans of Kansas Speedway know how to have a good time. One that celebrates fantastic finishes and family-friendly facilities. Trading paint.
We got feuding
and tailgating tradition. Burnouts, beer, and barbecue. Oh, it'll for sure be a good time, and you are all invited. NASCAR weekend at Kansas Speedway, May 4th and 5th. Get your tickets now at kansasspeedway.com.
This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
Bagels and Joe is the perfect place for breakfast or lunch in April. Try their brand new cake batter cream cheese on any breakfast. Sample will go to the Foundation for Lincoln Public Schools. 4 locations in Lincoln and 1 in Seward. Bagels and Joe.
I'm Dave Osted. And I'm Ryan Osted. Every golfer will get value from being custom fit. The truth is, the higher handicappers will get more value from being custom fit than the low handicappers.
It's changed so much since my dad started the business in 1963. We now have hundreds of thousands of dollars in technology, and we know exactly what the spin rate is, what the launch angle is. We encourage you to bring your current clubs in now, and we can compare it. And guys walk out of the store knowing that the purchase they just made is going to give them 21 more yards off the tee box. Play better, have fun, and shop Osted's.
Unearth the secret to long-lasting tires at Tread's Central Tire Pros, a league apart in commitment, service, and expertise. This isn't just about rubber meeting the road, but trust, safety, and surety converging in perfect harmony. This is where expectations are exceeded every time. Make your appointment today at Tread Central Tire Pros, just south of Cortland on Highway 77, or visit our website to explore our services. Remember, when it comes to tires, choose Tread Central Tire Pros because we tread differently.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
Nobody goes to McDonald's more than you. Nobody.
No,
every meal,
I agree
every
with that.
I mean,
Don't go
every meal.
Every morning you're there.
Every morning goes to McDonald's
single
every day.
I do it. Oh, I go every day.
Is it?
Yeah,
How many
that's what I
times?
mean. That's a lot. How many?
I mean, sometimes
I'm
twice
saying
a
in the
day.
next year I go 9 times. I
That's
go
high
9.
for me. I'm not going 9
Oh,
times
I mean,
to
7
McDonald's.
times
Yeah.
a week. Seven
Yeah.
times a week.
That's what I mean.
Yes,
But there's a lot of
every
times
day.
though. You go more than once a day.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm telling you. So it's
But I just
500.
get coffee.
But you go 500 times a year. That's a lot. 500 times a year. The most I'm at is 9. I'm at 9. Jake's at 4, and you're at 500.
I say 4 to 5 for myself.
So I said 9. You said
Put
500.
it that way.
It is. Just do the math.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket.
93.7 The Ticket is proud to provide listeners with daily opportunities to win contests and prizes on our airwaves, and would like to take this opportunity to remind you of a couple rules. All participants must be 21 or older and must wait 30 days after winning a prize before participating in another contest. Once you win, you have 30 days to pick up your prize at the K&TK Studios, 1040 O Street in Lincoln, or your prize will be forfeit. Thank you for participating in our contest, and thank you for listening to 93.7 The Ticket.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com. On the internet, KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket. Welcome in to the Husker After Party Postgame Show on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. The Husker After Party Postgame Show is brought to you by Action Plumbing, AC and Electrical, Gary Michaels Clothiers, and Brandt Excavating. Now, here are your hosts, Jake Bockoven and Nick Sainert.
We are back here on the post-game show. Thank you for joining us. I am Jake Bachman. He is Austin Orman as we break down the victory for the white team today, 25-21 over the red team. Good game, I think, altogether for the red-white shootout, as Matt Rule labeled it, and it kind of lived up to that. A lot of passing yards, and an excellent debut from Dylan Raiola, which we went over there in the previous break. Let's look at some of the standouts outside of Dylan Raiola. Let me ask you this. Ja'Cory Barney, I thought, had a good debut as well for Nebraska. The big kick return, also got in the action in the end zone on a reception. Another one that I thought was noticeable was Janarian Bonner. It was kind of the fullback tight end H-back type of deal last year, and now is kind of playing out wide. Coming this fall, Austin, let me ask you, do you expect more of a role from Janarian Bonner or Ja'Cory Barney?
Barney, I think. My guess is that he's in the rotation alongside Nair, Banks, and Coleman. I think he can play inside a little bit. And I think Nebraska will use Janarian Bonner, who I think I'm just a year early on my breakout pick for him last year. You know, of course, as soon as I tweeted it out, he had the weird drop where it looked like he had a blocker and some room to run. I don't know if that was just a random drop or it looked like a touch pass from Daniel Kalen. Maybe Bonner was expecting the ball a little faster, a little flatter, maybe turned upfield a step too early. But yeah, I think both those guys really showed out. Bonner was the leading receiver on the day, 4 catches for 58 yards, had that first touchdown on a nice play there in south end zone that looked like his wide receiver days, right? They moved him to that kind of hybrid, kind of fullback, inline, tight end, H-back sort of role. And I wonder if it just took him a year to get it figured out. He looked more comfortable in it. They lined him up in kind of that kind of H-back way for the most part, not split out wide. and didn't really see any, fullback today in traditional I formation. So if Bonner is there as an H-back kind of out of the backfield off the line of scrimmage, I think that's a good add. But Ja'Cory Barney Jr. looks hard to keep off the field. Had a nice cut on the kick return, showed you the long speed, showed you some change of direction. I was really impressed with both those guys today, Buck.
Yeah, I was too. And I think they're both probably going to get into the action this year at some point. And Bonner specifically was kind of interesting. He's pretty big, like we said, kind of playing fullback and tight end last year, 6'2", 200 plus. And he was part of kind of that big lineup that I wanted to see when they go 4 wide. I think there was one time where they had Banks, Nair, Fedoni, and him out there. And obviously, if Malachi Coleman's playing, you can throw him out there. They can get pretty big on the perimeter really quick. And so I'm excited to kind of see that, along with, it being a big, having some big guys is exciting. But Jalen Lloyd also flashed his potential. I think he might be the biggest benefactor of anybody on the roster to have Dylan Raiola, who it wasn't necessarily the throw that he hit Lloyd for the touchdown was impressive, which it was on itself. I was impressed by an incompletion that he had where he very effortlessly threw the ball like 50 yards. It didn't look like he put too much into it. It's like a 60-yard incompletion just out through his receiver. Maybe that was the one where there's pass interference. I can't remember, but I was impressed by how effortless it looked. But I that's my prediction for the season. I'm not changing it coming out of today because I saw some things that I liked. Also, Jalen Lloyd showing a little bit more of the route tree. We kind of know he can run the 9 route, can run downfield. He did that, for 3 big touchdowns last year. Got another big touchdown today. But that was my prediction going in. I'll stick with it that Jalen Lloyd might be the biggest benefactor of Dylan Raiola coming to Nebraska.
That's fair. I think Naor could be as well. Malachi Coleman, we'll see. But yeah, Lloyd didn't have any problem getting open last year. Not a whole lot of problem even getting the ball. Yeah, that nice catch along the sideline as well early in the day. So the next step for Jalen Lloyd is to become that complete receiver. NFL teams, sure, can always use a deep threat. We know Jalen Lloyd has the track speed, but we also need to see plays more consistently like we did against Wisconsin, right? Where he took the ball, took that little hit over the middle, kind of the shoulder tackle, bounced off, and then turned on the jets and took it to the house. Today, we really just saw the long speed and the sideline catch from him, but another year of development, a quarterback that can get him the ball in multiple ways, not just deep down the field, will go a long way for a young man who, by the looks of it, I think he's a starter.
Yeah.
Right now, I think he's wide receiver 3, probably in the slot. You can flex him out wide. But let me ask you this, Bock. We saw quite a bit of Isaiah Naor, not a lot of Jamal Banks. He didn't have a catch today. Are you concerned about Jamal Banks maybe not being an impact guy, or do you think this is the staff saying, yeah, we're comfortable with him and what he gives us, so we're going to keep him off just to prevent injury?
Yeah, he was out there enough, but not like overly that you would consider it a missed opportunity. And yeah, I think we saw a little bit of Isaiah Nair, but it was kind of the same thing where I think you came into today wanting to see some flashes from those guys. Maybe didn't necessarily get that. But these are proven guys already in college football. Nair, to the lesser degree, not that he's not proven, but that he's coming off those injuries. So
and he looked good.
Yeah, out of the two, I thought it was good to at least see him get going a little bit.
Yeah, only officially 2 catches for 26 yards, but would have had a touchdown if not for the face mask on Jacob Hood. And I'm sorry, but why are we calling an illegal blindside block in a spring football game?
Oh, it looked good.
That was Kenny Bell-esque. It was just as good, but in a spring game, just let him play. What are we doing? I was upset about that, but you can see
that was Emmett Johnson, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
I was trying to figure out because they kept showing the replays. Like, how's the running back downfield that far? I couldn't figure out why, but I think it was Johnson.
Yeah, well, it was because I think he ran the route to the middle of the field toward that side, and then Naor a couple times we saw Nebraska drag him all the way across the formation from the west sideline to the east sideline. There, you can see. He's got long legs, and just his stride length is so long. That's how he can gain ground on guys. But Bock, I want to ask you this too, because I was a little puzzled by the game management again. And I get it. It's a spring game, but we had some questions about that from this Nebraska coaching staff. And I facetiously tweeted, why wasn't Red Team using their 3 timeouts at the end of the game? If they force a punt with under a minute to go, they have a shot to win it, whatever. But the drive right before halftime, I didn't quite understand. The first play of that drive, so it's Daniel Kalen at the helm. You have the pass to Nayor, who I think takes it for 18 yards, I want to say. But again, he got the ball over the middle of the field and just outraced everyone to the far sideline. Okay, I don't love it, but at least you got to the sideline. Well, from there, it's 2 passes to the middle of the field in no timeout. Maybe Emmett Johnson was the only guy open. I'm willing to, concede that, but no timeout taken. And I think the white team had all 3 of them. Like, at least I got a first down on the second one. But there were 10, 11, 12 seconds that went off the clock from the second play of the drive to the third play of the drive. Now, Nebraska ends up getting in field goal range anyways, but they took a timeout at 18 seconds after the second completion to Emmett Johnson. If you're going to take a timeout, take it after the first one. So it's even just those little things that probably doesn't mean anything. But also, if you want to make it as game-like and legit as possible, I would have liked to have seen a timeout taken there to say, hey, we do have a grasp on time score situation, and this is what's going to give us the most time to give us the best chance.
Yeah, and you never know, again, what they're drilling. Maybe they want to see if they did it, if they didn't have those timeouts or whatever, but that would seem kind of odd. You're out there, it's a live drill. You don't have to set anything up. It is what it is. You have your timeouts, drill that, with what you have, and I'm sure that's what they did. And it happens to every coaching staff. I don't know if it's, I don't know if that was over. Do you think that, I know that was a complaint last year, but at times I felt like maybe it was too much of a complaint just with the offensive struggles altogether because of the personnel that they had. I don't know if it was enough of a problem from year one that it's overwhelmingly a concern going into year 2. There are certain coaches that just don't seem to have much of a grasp on time and timeouts. I don't know if I after going through 1 year of Matt Rule that I would say that was the case, but there were certainly some frustrations with management down the stretch last year. And yeah, I mean, I don't think anything's little enough to kind of pick apart here.
That's just the thing, is that Nebraska's roster is still not elite in terms of talent. Seems upgraded at some positions. You lost some guys that you have to replace on the other side too. So if the roster is not going to be top 10 in college football, the coaching has to be.
Yeah.
Good or elite talent makes a coach look good, but an elite coach makes potentially lesser talent look good. If Nebraska is going to be a developmental program, yes, that goes into player development, adding weight, adding skill, adding IQ, but it also goes into maximizing the game and managing that best with your athletes. So sure, I'll concede that maybe it's a little overblown last year, but at the same time, would 1 or 2 better coaching decisions have gotten Nebraska to a bowl game? I think it's a fair question to ask because this coaching staff can't just maximize the players. It has to maximize itself. It has to know the rules down to the granular details. It has to have a strategy and a plan. It has to know how and when to use timeouts because I still don't think Nebraska is a top 5 most talented roster in the Big Ten.
Yeah, no.
If Nebraska wants to jump up into that top 5 and maybe make a surprise run this year, the coaching is going to have to be better. It can't afford to overlook this. It can't afford to let situations like this in practice where it's drawn up perfectly for you to take a timeout to prove that you have the capability to do so. Those situations can't go to waste. This coaching staff still has a lot to prove. And in a year where, again, even if the talent's upgraded but not elite, there's going to be more on the table for this team this year than last year. You got to find a way to maximize it. Even those small coaching decisions add up.
Do you know, and just kind of trying to think through it, and I know Matt Rule was on the field for a lot of it. He was talking on BTN, so I don't know how plugged in he was throughout this whole thing. If that would be maybe a coordinator or somebody on the sideline that was in charge of that, white team, red team, whatever, that maybe lost time there. I mean, I see your argument. And I see the frustration. I just don't know if maybe that, having kind of your coaching staff torn apart in, on both sides of the field, maybe could have played into that.
It could have, but at the same time, why should it?
Right.
I mean, if Marcus Satterfield wants to be a head coach someday, he's going to have to know that stuff. Even if he's not the one that can call the timeout, guess what? He has communication down to his quarterback. It's his job, especially with young quarterbacks, to not just be thinking about the next play, but in the context of the play is the time, the score, the situation. And if you want a timeout, you need a timeout to save time. Be yelling timeout, timeout, timeout in your ear. Tell your quarterback, just put them together so the ref sees you. Traditionally, yes, it's the head coach on the sideline calling those timeouts. I get it. but we know that the quarterback can call the timeout as well. So no, Matt Rule's not going to be distracted with Big Ten Network during a game. But Matt Rule also was the one missing some of those opportunities, arguably, last year.
Mm-hmm.
So in a spring game setting, I would rather have more people trying to take responsibility, trying to make the right decision. And even if they're not the one calling the timeout in the game, understanding that, hey, this is the situation that we would call a timeout in. Talking through it, in film review the next day, because it's important. Those things make or break a game. If Nebraska has another 10 seconds to run a play, or if Nebraska uses another 10 seconds and doesn't let an opponent run a play. I mean, 30 or 45 seconds could have sent Nebraska to a bowl game.
Well, it was
year.
the Wisconsin game, right? Where if they would have been able, that final drive, they got a field goal to get it in overtime, but they could have, if they would have used their timeouts and managed the clock better,
could have had another shot at the end zone.
Could have. And with that offense last year might end up in a pick, but at least you would at least like to have seen it. And that was one of the games, ultimately, the chasing three, the whole idea of just coming up short last season down the stretch. And I think that was the most notable time, at least for me last year, where they could have used some better time management. And so,
Iowa comes to mind, Maryland comes to mind, Michigan State, they didn't play so well. And shoot, even the end of the first half against Minnesota wasn't ideal. So there are 4 opportunities right there.
Yeah.
You only need one of them. Just get it right in one of them, and you didn't.
Yeah. So I think that's maybe one detail not to overlook, and hopefully the coaching staff can get a little bit better. How about another debut, though, from Dante Dowdell? Did break off a big one for a touchdown at the end. I don't think he necessarily had to break a tackle there, so it was kind of well blocked. The edge, whatever, lost contained, and he got outside. What did you think of Dante Dowdell? Were you impressed enough to think that he can push Emmett Johnson for the starting job?
I think he can. I think he and Emmett Johnson are different enough that they can complement each other.
Yeah.
And I think both of them will have games this year where they get starter reps, just depending on what style of game it is, right? You saw some good burst. You saw some good cuts from Emmett Johnson. Didn't play a whole lot, only 5 carries for 25 yards on those couple catches I mentioned as well. Emmett Johnson did nothing to show me that he shouldn't be the favorite for RB1 going into the fall. Dante Dowdell, I don't know how much stock to put into it, because again, going against a lot of backups on defense, to be fair. So it's hard to judge the speed. Would he have run away from, a Big Ten caliber starting defensive back? But I think generally speaking, his process was pretty good, right? He made the right cut on his long touchdown run. That was nice. He lowered the shoulder to get into the end zone on the short touchdown run. So I think just from a mental standpoint, I think Dante Dowdell made the right plays. And even if the 49-yard touchdown is a 30-yard run instead of a 49-yard touchdown, hey, that's still great because he made the right cut. He read the hole correctly. I was impressed with him, and I think that's at least the outline of a good 1-2 punch for Nebraska this year.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, Gabe Ervin, Ramir Johnson could get back into that mix. Quentin Ives played a little bit today. Nothing I think necessarily stood out about him, but you never know. He could get into that mix. And that's where it's hard to kind of, again, break down as a spring game. I found Stephon Thompson. He's hard to find because I didn't know what number it was. He wore number 56, and he played a little bit there. Again, if you're some of these newcomers just came in, didn't get too many snaps, so it's kind of hard to figure out, how much they were able to do. How about up front? The offensive line there. I don't even know if there was a registered, maybe a sack, maybe 1 or 2. It's hard to tell too, because even on the touchdown to Fedoni, it would have been, and Matt Rule said as much, it would have been a sack, or at least, it would have been disrupted at that point. So it's kind of hard to tell. I thought, and I said as much last year, the defensive line really stood out last year's spring game. And very rarely does something from the spring game translate into the actual season. Hopefully Dylan Raiola and some of the playmakers that we saw today do. But that did. That being said, I don't know. It was just tough to get too much of a read on anything from the defensive line because they couldn't sack. And then the offensive line, I think, give them enough credit that there's, it wasn't. What was it? I can't even remember. I was trying to think of it. Was it Reimer a couple years ago had like 3 sacks as he just went back there and touched the quarterback? I think it was Reimer. But you didn't have that sort of day. So again, at least, not to talk about enough protection, I think. And then the fact that Dylan Raiola can kind of make up for it if you don't have it is because, he's not, so often, and it'll happen in his career where you have to think, oh man, he just didn't get his plant foot down. He didn't get into his setting, but he was throwing on the move pretty well today as well. That was part of the impressive part of seeing Dylan Raiola. But any thoughts on the front lines here?
I'll tie it in with the quarterback thing you were saying. Harbrick had that one carry for 17 yards. It looked decisive. The offensive line did a good job of, pushing the rushers out, not allowing middle pressure. Everyone was covered. Harburg made a decisive move, took off toward the sideline, and that was nice. When Raiola was throwing on the move, it's because they shifted the pocket on purpose, right? It's not like he was running for his life and having to create. It was designed to look like that. I think it was fine. I think the offensive line handled that pretty well. There were one or two free rushers, I think, all game. I mean, Longville at the end of the game, okay, whatever. But there was a pass. I think Raiola threw it to the far sideline with a free rusher coming into his face. Now, I think that was the one that Mazuka got tackled for no gain by Stinger. But I think in years past, Nebraska quarterbacks maybe pump fake that or step up a little bit too much. Raiola just right over the rushing guy, just right over his hands, got it to a playmaker. And I think that was kind of has a blitz off the edge, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a slide that wasn't picked up. Not much that I can take away from either. I mean, the defensive line didn't dominate, the offensive line didn't dominate, and I think that's fine that we didn't notice these guys, especially on the defensive side, without a couple of the stalwarts, playing much, if at all. I have no complaints about them. Neither side looked great. Neither side looked horrible. And I think that's what you want out of a spring game, isn't it?
Yeah.
They handled each other.
Yeah. I think that works out. And again, they were throwing the ball around a little bit more maybe than they would in a typical offense. We'll see how it goes. I mean, that might be the strength of the offense this year. But we'll have to wait and see. It's almost comical to think of that coming off of last year, but it could be.
Right. 37 carries for 170 yards. That's combined. A little, between the two teams. That would be, about a little over 4 yards per carry, 4.3, somewhere in that neighborhood, which is about on pace for what you want. You'd like it maybe closer to 4.5 or over, but 4.3 in a spring game without the emphasis on the run game, I think that's acceptable at the end of the day.
Well, I think too, and all this is hard to, different ways to digest it, but coming into this year, it is the extreme example of a very good side of the ball against a very bad side of the ball. And now that bad side of the ball on offense, again, and they have the same number. They all both averaged 18 points per game last year. Defense, that's really good. Offense, that's pretty bad. But so I think it was good to see that the defense wasn't out there overwhelming the offense. And I thought that might be a bit of a concern coming in. And that was kind of the reports throughout the spring. And that can happen with any team, let alone having that side of a defense just working through the beginning of spring practice.
But we heard the defense was ahead at the start of spring practice, which makes sense with a lot of older guys and fewer transfers to integrate in key spots, at least. But it sounds like the last 10 days or so, the offense has looked really good. And I think the emphasis today was on the offense because aside from, I think, 5 false starts and a couple other penalties there, things looked like they were running smoother. They really did. It seemed like there was more poise, more consistency on pretty much every front from the Nebraska offense. So I'm not worried about the Nebraska defense. They've got a lot of work to do if they want to live up to last year's billing and make sure that wasn't a fluke, in year one of Tony White. But with the veterans on that side, I'm not too worried about it. So I'm not going to ding the defense too hard. I'm just going to credit the offense for looking better.
Yeah, I think that's fair. By the way, of course, yesterday, kind of disaster struck across Nebraska with tornadoes hitting home for many Nebraskans. To help people affected by disasters, big and small, text Red Cross to 90999 to give $10 to American Red Cross. Nebraska strong, as we stand with Nebraska and our neighbors in Iowa. We have a few more minutes as we wrap it up. Any closing thoughts to spring game coverage for yourself? Anything we didn't get to quite yet?
Good showing. It was fine. It was normal. Not a lot to write home about necessarily. Dylan Raiola did nothing to quell the hype. Heinrich Harburg looks better. Daniel Kalen looks like the development prospect. You see the athleticism. You see the speed on the offense, especially from the wide receiver position. Curious to see who steps up as tight end 2 behind Fedoni. Saw a lot of different guys there at that position, and not a lot of takeaways from the defense for me. Not a lot of concern there necessarily, but yeah, all around pretty well played game, and I think Nebraska's on pace, Buck.
Well, there you have it. I think they are too. It does amaze me sometimes that stadium and today's 60,000 going to it. With everything you have here at Nebraska, they should be able to at least reach a bowl game. I think they're going to be on pace for that this year. That'll wrap it up for our thoughts as of now, but we've got plenty more, obviously, throughout the rest of the week. Stay tuned to 93.7 The Ticket, as we're always going to be talking Husker football. But thanks to everybody who helped us out today, and we'll see you. Go Big Red.
Buckle up and hang on. This is going to be a good one.
The fans of Kansas Speedway know how to have a good time. One that celebrates fantastic